This is the closing victory, successful completion ceremony of the 15th annual special 60-day retreat at Sermengon Forest Center, Paṇḍitā Rama. And what Sayadaw would like to say is just three things. First of all, he is very happy to have had the opportunity to help those who come from abroad, his relatives, his Asian relatives, world relatives, and samsaric relatives, these three groups of relatives who have come here to become related through the Dhamma, through the blood of the Dhamma, according to the teaching of the Buddha. So he is very happy to have had this opportunity and to see the yogis accept and put into practice the teachings, especially to see those who practiced respectfully, with meticulous care and continuity. For example, the representative of the female yogis. To see yogis like this is extremely satisfying, and it makes it worth Sayadaw's efforts, tiresome efforts, to help in this matter. What Nicole said, the world is burning. This is what the Buddha said. The world is burning due to 11 kinds of fire. And of these, the most important kinds of fire are the fires of raga, lust or greed, the fires of anger or dosa, the fire of delusion or moha. So when one encounters an object that one likes, raga or greed or lust is only satisfied if it gets that object. It's not satisfied otherwise. This is one of the fires. And when one encounters an object, sees something one doesn't like, then there's dissatisfaction, depression, anger, impatience, inability to forgive, inability to help others, to sacrifice one's own benefit. All these things are the fire of anger, dosa, dosegi. And then there is the inability to weigh or consider whether something is beneficial or not, whether something is suitable or not. This is the fire of delusion, mohegi, and this is the worst of all. Before his enlightenment as the Buddha, the Bodhisattva looked at the world from where he was, and he saw that these fires are burning in the world. Of the two kinds of fires, the ones that burn within and the ones that burn outside of oneself, the inner fires are worse than the external fires. So the Buddha, first of all, sought a way so that he could become free of these internal fires. He made the decision that I will first put out the fires inside myself. And so he fulfilled the paramis, beginning with dana, generosity. And when he fulfilled the paramis and reached his last lifetime, he practiced the Dhamma of Satipatthana. And he put out the gross fires, the medium fires, and the very subtle fires completely, and gained peace. The Bodhisattva worked to put out the fires. He worked to fulfill the paramis, and in his final lifetime, with the practice of Satipatthana, he put out all these 11 types of fire. And in particular, he put out the fire of raga, or greed, the fire of dosa, or anger, the fire of moha, or delusion. These fires were completely put out, so that no matter what object the Buddha encountered, whether it was a desirable object, itaramana, there was no more movement of the mind due to lust, greed, or raga. Whenever he encountered an undesirable object, anitaramana, there was no movement due to anger. He was always calm and peaceful, no matter what the object was. And because ignorance had been completely dispelled, there was no movement due to moha or delusion. The Buddha was completely calm and peaceful. This is what is meant by Santa. So Sayadaw spoke about Santa earlier. It means one who is calm and peaceful. The Buddha himself made himself completely free of the agitation of greed, hatred, and delusion, so that he was completely calm and peaceful. And this is what is meant by Santa. Santa, how the Buddha arrived at this situation of Santa is explained in the Buddhist text. It is said, Santo so bhagava samataya dhammang deseti. The Buddha was firmly established in the correct objective, to put out the kilesas. And he fulfilled the paramis and then found the middle way, the way of practice, and put that into practice. When he did so, he gained tadanga santi, or momentary peace. And for the Bodhisattva, this was very quick. And at the completion of tadanga santi, he reached achanta santi, that is the ultimate peace. And he became completely not only calm but peaceful. And so that the meaning of Santo is one who is free of the agitation, the movement of raga and the other kilesas. And this is what the situation that the Buddha reached. So first of all, in order to put out these fires, the Bodhisattva fulfilled the paramis, and he practiced. With the practice, he put out the fires. And at the time of tadanga santi, or momentary peace, he had calmness. At the moment of realizing achanta santi, or ultimate peace, with path knowledge, he put out the fires completely. With fruition knowledge, path and fruition knowledge, these fires were put out so that they would never arise again in him. And only after making himself peaceful like this did he preach the way to become peaceful, the Dhamma, with great compassion and with the knowledge called desana jnana, the ability to teach. From this, reaching this situation of becoming completely peaceful, for the Buddha, there was no new lifetime to come after this one. No old age. No new lifetime means that there will be no old age in a new lifetime, no sickness, no death, no sorrow, no lamentation, that is crying when we are sad. All these things died out. This was the result of the Buddha's practice. The Buddha himself, only after he had put out the fires of raga and dosa, moha, within himself, did he preach the Dhamma so that others too could become peaceful. not as nowadays. Nowadays, what is common, in particular in some large countries in the world, they hold up a bomb in one hand and an olive branch of peace in another. This is not the way of the Buddha. The Buddha made himself peaceful first, and then he taught the Dhamma, which is the way we too can become peaceful. Regarding this, some of the great scientists and thinkers of the world, Albert Einstein and Bertrand Russell, studied Buddhism. They studied the teachings of the Buddha, and they found that among the teachings of the world, the religious teachings of the world, the teaching of the Buddha is the way of peace, and therefore they liked it the best. They did not hold on to any religion. They did not adopt any religion, these two great thinkers. But they said that if they had to choose a religion, it would be, if they had to follow one teaching, they would follow the teaching of the Buddha. This is something that they declared publicly. A few years ago, there was a meeting in Switzerland of religious leaders of the world. And at that meeting, they named Buddhism to be the best of all religions, the teaching of the Buddha. And why they reached this decision was because people of other religions go to war in the name of their religion. But there has never been any war fought in the name of the teaching of the Buddha. So they felt that this made Buddhism best. And a Jewish leader, and if I remember correctly, he was a rabbi, he said that, yes, I'm a Jew, but since I practiced, before I go to work in the morning, I meditate. And he made this point in the meeting. So one can guess from this that he experienced Tadanga Santi, momentary peace, and came to realize Achanta Santi. For whom did the Buddha give instruction? For whom did the Buddha teach? Why did he do this? He did it for the beings of the world, for us, that is, those who want to put out the fires that are burning. And also for those who do not yet get the chance, but wish to fulfill the paramis. So what was his objective in teaching the Dhamma? It is said samataya. That is, he taught the Dhamma so that we could put out the fires of the world, so that we could get peace. He didn't advertise himself as a great teacher of peace. He didn't teach in order to get praise or in order to get material reward from people. His objective was samataya, so that we too could gain peace by putting out the fires. He didn't have any objective of making a name for himself. So with this objective of us too being able to put out the fires within, he taught the Dhamma, that is the method for putting out the fires. And he taught with great karuna, compassion, and great knowledge, wisdom. So if those who want to gain a guarantee for their life, those who come and practice the method of Satipatthana, if we see how it calms the fires, how it puts them out, then when we go back home, when we leave here, Sayadaw says, don't leave the method here. Don't leave the method of practice here. Take it with you, inside you. And wherever you go, take more time to continue to put out the fires more and more, to gain more and more peace, calm and peace. He urges all of us very seriously. The fires of the transgressive kilesas, the fires of the kilesas that obsess in one's mind, the fires of the latent kilesas that lie dormant in our being. To put out these fires, these three fires, the Satipatthana practice contains the three trainings of Sila to put out the gross fires, Samadhi to put out the medium level fires, and Panya to put out the subtle, refined level of fire. And if one finds that these fires have died down quite a bit, it is because of respectful practice that is careful and meticulous, practice that is done continuously. And when one sees such yogis, it is quite satisfying. For such yogis, the door to the Paṇḍitārama Forest Center is always open. And Sayadaw invites such yogis, come and practice. So the last thing that Sayadaw would like to speak about is a verse from the Dhammapada. Apamadarata hota, sacheta manurakata, doga udaratatana, panke sanowa konjuro. Sayadaw explains, so this first line, apamadarata hota, the Buddha said, may you delight in apamada. Apamada means to always dwell with sati. Why? Why should we do this? Because if we lack sati, we will commit unwholesome deeds, ducharitas. And doing these unwholesome things, one will get bad results. One will have no restraint without sati. And if one cannot restrain oneself regarding things that should not be done, then one will get bad results. If one does not do the things which should be done, one will get no good results. Thus, living without sati, if one neglects to avoid the things that should be avoided, and one neglects to do the things that should be done, the only results one will get are bad. Therefore, the Buddha told us, instructed us to delight in apamada, dwelling with sati. Spend all your time like this. There are many things that are to be avoided, that are not to be done. Do not neglect avoiding these. Don't forget to avoid these. There are many things that need to be done, that should be done, that improve one's life. Don't neglect these. So this advice is very good. As is said in the term apamada, one should not neglect to avoid the things that should be avoided and to do the things that should be done. What happens if we neglect to avoid these things that should be avoided and we neglect to do what should be done? With regard, whenever there's an object that arises, we let the mind go. And therefore various transgressions occur. Without restraint, there are sure to be transgressions. But if one restrains oneself with sati, it won't reach the stage of transgression. Therefore the Buddha said, Sacheta manurekata. That means that one should always guard one's mind so that it does not transgress regarding what is seen, regarding what is heard, smelled, tasted, touched, and so on. This is the second instruction of the Buddha. The reason why the Buddha spoke this gatha with great compassion was that there was an elephant at one time, a very great big elephant who was old. And when he was grazing for food, he got stuck in a muddy swamp. And first his front legs were struggled. He struggled with his front legs. He struggled with his rear legs trying to get himself out of this swampy mud. And as much as he struggled, he would continue to sink down into the mud. So it reached the point at which he was about to become completely submerged in the mud. And the king commanded, he heard about this, and he commanded the elephant trainer to get the elephant out. And so the elephant trainer came and he showed the elephant what one normally sees at the front line of battle, the gear and pennants and so on. And he had them beat the drum of war. And when the elephant heard it, because he had been an elephant used in war, his spirit immediately rose up and he pulled with all his might and he climbed right up onto the dry ground. If one uses just ordinary effort, one will surely sink in the mud and die. One has to use extreme effort. So the Buddha used this as an example to encourage the monks. He said, "Oh, my sons, my daughters, you are sinking in the mud of the kilesas, of raga, dosa, and moha, greed, hatred, and delusion, that have been with you throughout lifetimes. Like this great elephant, pulled with all his might to get himself up onto the dry ground, you too must pull yourselves out of this mire, this bog of the kilesas, to get onto the dry ground." This is what the Buddha instructed the monks. So one is sinking in the mud of the kilesas, and one has to use sati. And when one pulls oneself out of this mud of kilesas, one will be standing on the dry ground, the firm ground of Nibbana. So the Buddha urged the monks to do this. And he said that those who always live with mindfulness because with living with mindfulness we do not go to transgressions. So if one doesn't always dwell with mindfulness, as the Buddha encouraged us to, then because one doesn't know the presently arising object, kilesas will come in. So when kilesas come in, then one will be sinking in this mud of the kilesas. There will be transgressive kilesas, as putting into action one's greed and anger. There will be kilesas in the mind, and there will be kilesas at the refined level. So one has to even go to the extent of putting out the very seeds of the kilesas, which can turn into fires in the mind and then into transgressions. And the practice of satipatthana is the best thing to rely on for this work of putting out the fires of the kilesas. the Buddha instructed in another desana to rely on yourself. Do not rely on others. Rely on the Dhamma. That is, the Dhamma of Satipatthana. Because not noting and knowing kilesas come in. Noting and knowing kilesas come clean. So the method that we use for this is the method of Satipatthana. And Sayadawji's last instruction to us is to speak about what happened when the Buddha preached this gatha. The monks who were listening to this verse practiced the Dhamma of Satipatthana as the Buddha instructed at that very time when they were listening to the gatha. And by the end of the sermon, they became arahants. So, although the yogis here may not yet be at that stage, you know the method for reaching this stage. And therefore, Sayadaw urges you, as the Buddha said, to delight in living with mindfulness, never being without mindfulness. Guard your mind so that it does not transgress with regard to what is seen, heard, smelled, tasted, and touched, and thought. Like the elephant, the great elephant who struggled to pull himself up onto the dry ground, you too, you must struggle. The Buddha urged people to struggle to pull oneself out of the mud of the kilesas and onto the dry ground of Nibbana. So Sayadawji wishes to give you this last instruction. That is all. Now please repeat in English. May the sasana and the world always prosper. May the sasana and the world always be protected by noble devas.